Welcome to the Kick It Open podcast, where we celebrate bold moves and reveal the strategies shaping success in the wealth management industry. Our goal is to inspire you to kick the doors open on your personal success. I'm your host, Shelby Nicholl. Today's episode is all about something that every advisor is thinking about: growth. But not just any growth, we're talking about organic growth, and especially I have the best guest with us to talk about organic growth. I'm joined today by Matthew Jarvis, founder of the Perfect RIA, author of the book Deliver Massive Value, and of course, he's an advisor himself. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Shelby, thanks so much for having me. These are a lot of fun to do together.
And you know, I was just saying this off camera that I get to be on this side of the desk today. I get to ask you the questions, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, these always air at different times, but we were literally yesterday recording, you were recording on my show, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I get to see you 2 days in a row and now ask you the questions. So,
all right. And we'll see how this goes, because I felt like I was pretty nice to you yesterday, so we'll see if you return the favor.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
Well, fair
all
enough.
right. Okay, so Matt, let's start with an easy one. Tell us a little bit of the backstory. You had your practice, you went on Kit's podcast, and then you created the Perfect RIA. Tell us about a little bit of your journey and that problem that you're really solving for advisors.
Yeah, so I'll quick backstory. My first 5 years of my career, I had a terrible time. I was not making any money. If I saw a prospect, I would usually botch it. I would almost wish that they wouldn't become a client because I didn't know what to do if they became a client. Eventually, I was able to turn that around. We'll talk about some of that today. By 2017, I had passed $1 million a year in revenue, just myself and an office manager. Michael Kitces invited me on his show, episode number 7, still the most popular one he's ever done. And I said, hey, listen, I'm running at the time $1 million a year practice. I'm taking 6 months off a year. It's just me and one other person. And I feel like everybody else can do this as well. I then was overwhelmed with inquiries from people saying, hey, how do I do this myself? Which at first I was glad to just answer everyone's calls. Then it got to be a little much. And so we started doing the podcast and the coaching program and the book. And now here I am at the pinnacle on the Kick It Open podcast. So
thank you
I'm going to retire after this. I'm done. This is my last one.
Somehow I doubt it, because I know you have big dreams. You're always building something.
Trying to.
Yeah. So talk about your book and the podcast. You talk about Deliver Massive Value. And of course, that's the title of your book, which I have here because I have read it cover to cover. I tell everybody to. How did Deliver Massive Value become kind of like your personal philosophy?
Yeah, so I have, if we're going to peel back the onion, I have like this really deep fear of rejection. Like, people don't think that. Like, they see me out and I'm on stage and I'm on your podcast and I'm on LinkedIn and whatever. But I have this really deep aversion to someone telling me like, hey, listen, like, you're an idiot. Like, I shouldn't hire you. You're kind of a dummy. And so one of the ways I've compensated for that is let me just tip the scales so much that if somebody says like, hey, Matthew, I don't want to hire you either as a coach or a financial advisor, like, I can easily say like, hey, there's some just kind of like personality fit here. It's really not about me. Like, I'm bringing so much value to the table for the price that I'm charging that if they don't think it makes sense to them, it's because we're operating in different worlds. And Shelby, I use this example. Like, if somebody came into my office and said, hey, Matthew, I'm looking for someone to help me launder money to terrorist organizations in the Middle East, that would be an easy no. And I wouldn't feel any rejection. I'd be like, hey, listen, that's not my deal. Or less extreme if they said, like, I'm going to go through bankruptcy and I need some help getting out of credit card debt. That's not my deal. And so we created this process, I call it the Sleep On It process, where we help people make an educated and informed decision, which they love, but I also love as well, because at no point am I, and this was my old process, like, hey, Shelby, would you please hire me because I really need you as a client? And then you felt awkward and I felt awkward and you said no, and I took it really, really personally because I made it personal. That was my mistake.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think any of us that are working with people and trying to win them as clients, you're trying to win them as clients. And on one hand, you know, how do we kind of change that mindset? We're not winning the clients, we're earning the clients.
Yeah, totally. Because if I set myself up that I want to win the client, then I'm also setting myself up that I can lose the client. And I guess there's some people out there, you know, the Wolves of Wall Street or whatever else, that doesn't bother them. Like, they don't care. I do care. And so I really want to set it up. And I don't ever want to find myself in a spot where I feel like I have to make the high pressure sale. Like, you and I can have this comfortable conversation right now because neither of us is worried that some big sale is coming. Like, we're not worried about this pitch. We're not worried about we're going to have to make some kind of excuse. That's not a timeshare. Like, we can have this really open, comfortable dialogue because we've already agreed in advance how this is going to go. Same for your prospect process. A prospect sits down with you, and most advisors aren't getting a lot of prospects, which means we can't just waste these. It's not like you're getting 10 a day, and you're like, I'm getting 10 every single day. I can blow through a few of them. I just need to get 1 out of 10 to close. Most advisors might get 10 a year. And so when somebody comes in, I want to have a really, really good process that they say like, wow, this is an awesome process. Even if I don't hire Matthew, like this was an incredible process.
Yeah. So let's talk about your process. What is the process that you specifically recommend for advisors?
Yeah. And it's the process I use myself. Like the only thing I can ever recommend is what I do myself. And so when someone reaches out to my office, whether that's because they found our website or they attended a seminar that we did, or I met them in community or whatever the case may be, my team and I tell everybody, we say, hey, we've created this process by which you can make an educated and informed decision about our firm. And great news, Shelby, you can use this same process to evaluate any other firm that you're considering. Does that sound okay to you? Now, as a consumer, you think, this is the best thing I've ever heard of. Like Imagine you go to the car dealership, Shelby. Imagine like you and your husband want to buy a new car and you go down to the Ford dealership. They are never going to tell you, hey, we're going to help you evaluate if you should buy a Ford versus a Toyota. Like they're not going to say that. What are they going to say? We have a deal that's today only. And if you love your family, you're going to buy this truck today. Otherwise, you'll never get this deal again. Like that's what we're used to. And so I'm turning it on its head. Hey, I want you to make an educated and informed decision. Now I'm going to stack the deck in my favor, right? But I'm still going to walk them through that process.
Yeah, I think that's even interesting too, that you say, I'm still going to stack the deck in my favor. And that's fair, right? That's still okay.
Yeah.
We should do that. We should do that. And each advisor is delivering amazing value. You just have to sort of lean into it and know which of that portion it is. You like to say sometimes that onboarding is not about paperwork, it's about positioning. Can you talk about kind of the biggest mistake that maybe advisors make that is holding them back from that conversion?
Yeah, I think that the two biggest mistakes is they don't identify the elephant in the room. And then the other is that they assume that through some magic that what the client has imagined is what you're going to deliver, which is about the same as, Shelby, me asking you to think of a number between 1 and 1,000,000 and we both guess the same number. Like that's not going to happen. Same with the prospect process or client meetings, right? If I don't tell a client or prospective client how it's going to work, it's left to their imagination, which is almost never going to be how it really is, which leads to disappointment. Whereas if I say in advance, hey, Shelby, we're going to do it this way. Is that okay with you? Well, now you know, you have an anchor and you can let me know right away. So if I say, hey, Shelby, I'm going to get that to you next Wednesday, that now you know when to expect it, which if you didn't have a time in your mind, great. Now you say, great, by next Wednesday, so I can deliver on that. Or if you say, actually, Matthew, I really need that tomorrow because of this. Oh, cool. Like I'll get it to you tomorrow, but otherwise I didn't know. And otherwise I'm left with you thinking, hey, you're going to deliver this tomorrow. I'm thinking next week and you're left disappointed and it's a mess all around.
It seems like really what you're doing there is calming the anxiety by taking away the unknown. You know, I think anytime we walk into new situations, we can feel that anxiousness. And you're saying, hey, let's honor that. Like, let's just know that that's how it works for clients too. Yeah,
totally. And part of that anxiousness, I'm glad you called it that, is this elephant in the room of like, when am I going to be sold? Like as Westerners, as Americans, I don't know if it's true everywhere in the world, but we get sold so often that we're always assuming that we're going to get sold. And we're assuming that really like every question that someone asks us is trying to back us into the corner of being sold something. And so when I sit down with a prospective client in the first meeting, whether that's in person or Zoom, I always make this dumb joke. I make it every single time. I say, hey, Shelby, you might have noticed when you walked in that there's no lock on our door. And everyone gets this confused look and they turn and look and sure enough, there's no lock on the door. And I say, Shelby, that's because this isn't a timeshare presentation. Today in our meeting, it's about learning more about each other. There's nothing to buy. There's nothing to sign up for. There's no paperwork to sign. The only hard sell, Shelby, is at the end of this meeting, I'm going to ask you if you want us to do a one-page financial plan. And if you don't, Shelby, you can just say, you know what, I'm going to think about that one and we can end the day as friends. And if you say yes, then I'll explain how that works. Shelby, is that okay with you? Wow. And you're like, yeah, that is okay with me. So it takes all of the pressure out of the room, also takes all the pressure off of me. Because otherwise I'm watching the clock and I'm thinking, all right, I got to ask Shelby for the next step. Like, when am I going to do it? And Shelby just asked me another question, but I really need to get this out. And Shelby, you can feel the tension building up in the room. So instead I've let all the tension out of the room, and I've committed myself to, at the end of this, I've got to offer the one-page financial plan, or you're going to be like, hey, listen, when's the one-page financial plan coming?
One of the things too, I think that's so interesting about your approach is you just said the words that you use that joke, use those lines every single time. Is
Every
it
time.
Truly every time?
It's 100% of the times.
Yeah.
It's 100%. I'll give you another example. Every time we're doing a seminar, a client education, any kind of seminar, I always make the same joke. I say, hey, listen, the bathrooms are out the door to the left, like wherever they are, out the door to the left, out the door to the right. That is also where the exit is. And so if at any chance this gets boring or salesy, or you just feel like you need to bow out, if you would feign like you're using the bathroom and then just sneak out the back, that would be great, because then it won't hurt my feelings that you left in the middle. And we all laugh, and it's the same stupid joke I tell every time. But again, it takes all of the tension out of the room for them and for me. And so, yeah, I use the same one every time. Like, it gets boring for me, I guess. But for them, it's the first time they've heard it, right? It's like a dad joke. Like, you hate your dad's jokes because you've heard them 100 times. I guess everybody hates your dad's jokes. But anyway, here I am.
Yeah. But I think that consistency is so interesting, because I think, even for myself or for anyone, right? You're having a conversation and you can think, oh, I need to change it up. I need to adjust it a little bit. But you've honed it. You've kept it consistent. How did you get to that consistency?
You have to keep it consistent. Like, somehow we've told ourselves that we need to customize the experience. And there are areas that need to be customized, but it's not in the delivery. Like, imagine you get on the airplane and the pilot comes on and like, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Pilot Dan, and I've done checklists every time. We're not going to do checklists. In fact, I'm not even sure we're going to fly this thing. We're just going to take off and we're going to see where it goes. Like, you're not going to think, wow, I'm really getting a customized experience. Or you're getting ready to go into surgery and the surgeon's like, you know what, usually we do it this way, but you know what, today we're going to do it the other way. Like, you're not feeling better about that.
Right. Today we're going to do that anesthesia thing at the end, not at the beginning.
We're going to try it at the end. I'm tired of washing my hands. These checklists are dumb. Or, I don't know if you have a favorite like Broadway play. Like, you're not going to that Broadway play saying, I hope they improv it today. Like, I hope Hamilton, they come up with some new songs. Like, maybe they'll do polka music instead of, rap, or whatever the case may be. We want a systematized approach. And by being so systematized, it lets me save my subconscious, my brain power for the client's unique needs. So I'm not thinking about how am I going to ask for the next step. I already know that. I'm thinking like, what's their body language saying? What are their concerns? What's their dynamic if it's a couple? Like, I can watch for all those things because I'm not worried about like, when am I going to ask for the check?
Mm-hmm. You practice a lot too.
All the time.
I know I've heard you say that. I think there was even a couple of LinkedIn posts recently about practicing. Talk about that, because I think that must have been how you got to this consistency level as well.
Well, sheer desperation. I got to this level by sheer desperation. You got to practice all the time. One of the best tools for that is to take a stand-up comedy class. Like, every town has a comedy club, every big town, and they typically all do stand-up comedy classes. So here's Shelby, do you ever go to stand-up comedy? Are you a fan?
I have, yeah.
So I love stand-up comedy.
I can't say I'm not a fan like you're a fan, I don't think, but I have gone.
I'm a huge fan.
Yes. And my cousin worked for Second City and was an improv actor for Second City for a long time. So I can remember going to his shows and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So when you see a good stand-up comic, either in person or you think of a big name, a Jerry Seinfeld or Dave Chappelle or whatever, when they're telling jokes, it feels like they're making it up. It feels like we're friends. It's the first time they've told that joke. But that's not the case at all. In fact, if you Google on YouTube, Jerry Seinfeld Pop-Tart, he talks about when he came up with this one joke about Pop-Tarts. It took him 2 years to come up with the joke. And he talks about that every word in the joke, every pause, every expression, everything was carefully rehearsed to make that joke as funny as possible. And it was one joke about Pop-Tarts. That's it. And so the best communicators are all just wildly rehearsed. They make it seem like they're doing it anecdotally. But anyway, back to stand-up comedy. Taking that class, they'll teach you that, like, hey, you have to practice this bit again and again. And we have to stop and say, where did people react? Where did they laugh? Should the joke be about Nancy or about Karen? Because the cuss sound is funnier to people. Like, all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Sorry, that's a whole nerd out on that.
Oh, I like it. And it reminds me of Marvelous Miss Maisels. They would on the show, they would have like the little book, and they would sort of record which things were hitting and which things weren't. And
yep.
And so we do that practice. We figure that out. We're very consistent. We're using the same words, and we're asking people to sleep on it. Talk about that sleep on it step, because that's so unique to me.
Yeah, the sleep one. This trips a lot of people up, a lot of advisors. And again, I built this process to complement my strengths and to compensate for my weaknesses, right? So what I found was I would get to the end of the meeting and I just wasn't reliably asking them to become a client. I would get nervous, it would be awkward, and the meeting would end and I hadn't asked them to become a client. And I had a lot of shoulds about that and shame, and I just could never get around it. So I came up with this process. So when I talk about the educated and informed decision, I get to the end and I say, hey, listen, at the end of this process, you're going to have 3 options, Shelby. Option number 1 is you can take this 1-page financial plan that we did and you can say, this is really great information, but you know what? I think I can implement it on my own. That's option number 1. Option number 2, you can say, hey, this is really great information, but Matthew, you're not exactly my cup of tea for whatever reason. I'm going to go find another advisor and I'm going to have them implement it. I would, Shelby, ask if you take that option, make them do their own work and use mine as a guide to check their work. Don't just show it to them, let them cheat. Option number 3, Shelby, I got to be honest, this is my favorite option because you and your husband seem like really nice people, which is you look at this, you say, this is really great stuff, and I want Matthew's team to implement it. Now, Shelby, odds are if we decide to work together, we will work together for the rest of your lifetime. Not because you're stuck working with me, that's just how it works out. And so because it's such a big decision, I'm going to insist that you and your spouse go home and you sleep on that. And while you sleep on it, you can decide which of those 3 options you want. You'll certainly come up with some more questions. So I'm going to schedule a follow-up appointment where we can answer those questions. Shelby, does that sound okay to you? And every single person says, yeah, that's actually perfect. Now, again, I've stacked the deck in my favor. Like, notice how I outlined the things. Notice the whole thing. You're going to love the work every single time. I always schedule that follow-up meeting. I'm not going to leave it open-ended, right? So I'm going to schedule that follow-up meeting, and then I'm going to be ready at that follow-up meeting with all the paperwork. So you're going to come back in. You're going to have 1 or 2 questions. I'm going to say, hey, Shelby, anything else? Nope. Okay, Shelby, should we go ahead and get started? Yeah, Matthew, we should. Okay, great news. Colleen already did the paperwork for us. It's going to take us just a minute. Let's get going.
Okay.
And so it was a process that I feel wildly comfortable doing, and it gets results. Like, I need both in the equation.
Mm-hmm. And it made you comfortable because it sort of took off the pressure of that ask.
Yeah.
It also alleviated a little bit of the pressure or the worry that maybe clients were saying, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm just giving you the yes because that's, I know what you want to hear, but I'm going to go back and talk to my spouse and maybe it'll turn to no tomorrow.
Yep. Now, other advisors, like my dear friend Micah Shalansky, he can do his entire meeting in one meeting. He'll charge for the initial meeting. He'll deliver value for 45 minutes. He'll then close him as a prospect right there. He'll take the check and move on. Like, he can do it in one, no problem. And he's built a very successful practice doing that. That just never worked for me. And so I had to adjust to a system that works for me and that gets results.
That's incredible. But you had to really self-reflect on that and spend some time thinking about like the emotion of it for you and the sort of mind share of it for you, but also for the client. Do you think there's any difference between the types of clients that you and Micah are attracting to your practices?
Maybe Micah's niche is federal employees, but it's still retirees. Some of it's just his ability to deliver value. Like, he's a masterful communicator. Like, I'm not just trying to say nice things about him because he's my friend. Some of it's his confidence level. Some of it's just what he stumbled into.
Yeah.
A lot of great performers end up there because they sort of accidentally, they just did it enough times that it worked.
Yeah.
The other reason go ahead. I'm sorry, Shelby.
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned confidence, so I want to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah,
you know,
please.
because it sounds like he's really confident. You obviously are always coaching advisors, and we've got a lot of advisors who are, you know, really technically very skilled, but they still have that head trash, as you and I both call it, and they're uncomfortable with that sales and that conversion. How do we get that confidence to come through?
Yeah, a big hack for me was finding someone that I respect, that I deeply, deeply trust and respect, and copying their system. So for me, it was Tom Gow. He passed away several years ago. I liked Tom's approach. He worked in a similar demographic, and a lot of my process is mirrored off of his process. And I would think, great, if I'm afraid to do it this way, like if it works for Tom, I'm just going to do it Tom's way because it works for Tom. Right? Shelby would be the same if I was evaluating channels. I'd say, man, I have a ton of respect for Shelby. I trust her judgment. And if we go through this process with Shelby and she says, hey, Matthew, based on everything you told me, this is the best option. Even if I'm terrified at the option because I'm afraid of whatever, all right, I've already decided that I trust Shelby. She's my gal. I'm going to do what Shelby recommends. Right? And that's kind of my philosophy at life. Find people that I can absolutely trust because they're the best at what they do. And if they tell me to go a direction, unless there's some variable that I haven't told them, in which case I need to tell them, I'm going to go that direction and I'm not going to worry about it.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely have to have that complete transparency. What I think is so great, though, is that you found this person that you could follow in Tom, right? And you could apply it to your own life, which is all of that self-reflection. And then you could enable it for the clients in a way that was like really emotionally comfortable for them.
Yep.
One of the pieces that's really emotionally uncomfortable for advisors is talking about fees. At what point in your client onboarding process do you talk about your fee schedule?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do not have my fee schedule on my website, and I'm opposed to advisors doing that because of the old adage, price out of place kills the deal. And so just as a little bit of background, it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, for consumers to tell advisors apart. Like, I know that you think being a fiduciary or a fee only or comprehensive, this or that. For clients and prospects, we all look and sound exactly the same. That's why the fee conversation comes up so much, as it's the only objective measurement most consumers can come up with. And so they say, well, what's your fee? Like, I don't know what else to ask. What's your fee? So to answer your question, Shelby, I don't ever explain my fee until the end of what we call the second meeting, where I've delivered the one-page financial plan.
Okay.
I do tell them in the first meeting, hey, I don't charge for this process because before you pay me $1 in fees or trust me with a penny of your nest egg, I want you to see exactly what it is we can do. And assuming that we can help you, then I'll be glad to explain how our fees work in a very transparent manner. But right now, I don't know enough about you to tell you what those would be.
Okay,
and so I always explain at the end of the second meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. So your meeting schedule is we've had a conversation. Somehow they've come into your funnel, coming into that first meeting, talking about goals, life, their objectives, probably talking a little bit about their finances at that point.
Yep.
Leaving and doing the one-page financial plan if they say yes.
Yep.
And then that's the second meeting, is you're presenting that plan. And at that point, you're at the end of the second meeting, you're showing them the fees and saying, do you want to sleep on it?
Yeah. So after I go through those three options and I say, hey, if you chose option number 3, your next question is obviously going to be, hey, Matthew, how much does it cost to work with you? And this is a really important question, Shelby. So for all of our clients that work for us, each calendar quarter, you'll see a line item on your statement. It'll say advisory fee and a dollar amount. And Shelby, you'll look at that number each quarter and I'll look at the number. And if we both agree that the value exceeds the fee, then we'll do this for another calendar quarter. And if at any time, Shelby, you look at that fee and you think, I'm not really sure the value is there, then we need to sit down and have a heart-to-heart to see if we can either fix that problem or, heaven forbid, we need to part ways as friends. And if we decide to part ways as friends, I'll do whatever I can to make the transition as smooth as possible. You'll keep all of the great work that we've done, and as a gesture of good faith, I'll refund my last quarter's fee. That way, again, we can part ways as friends. Shelby, does that sound okay to you? And you say, yeah, that sounds really good. And I say, great. Shelby, you may not be aware, but in our industry, fees for good financial advice range somewhere between 0, though nothing's ever really 0, Shelby, 0% and north of 3%. Our fee comes in right about in the middle at 1.5% a year, but I think that we're well above the middle when it comes to value. But again, Shelby, as I explained, each calendar quarter, you'll get to assess that, and then we'll just decide if we keep going or not.
Brilliant.
And that's how I present it every single time.
Every single time. Same words.
Time.
Yeah.
Exact same words. Yeah.
It's amazing. I think that
Exact
consistency, I'm just so taken by it. And I think probably because, I know that I have been looking for my consistent words, and I'm starting finally to find them, right? I have found them, but I'm not as consistent as I want to be. And so I'm taking this also for myself. I know advisors are taking this away and going, oh my gosh, consistency is the key. Because I think it's how you make it feel so in the moment real for the individual. They don't know, to your point, that it's consistent.
They don't know how consistent it is. I think that we're really good at detecting when someone's confident in what they're doing and what they're not. Especially like you and I and everyone listening, we're selling a fairy tale, like we're selling words, like we don't have a tangible product. At the end of the day, what we're saying is give me your money and trust me, it will be better when you're done. Like that's it. Like I get, comprehensive financial planning, blah, 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 blah. Like that's all gibberish to clients. We're saying, pay me money and trust me that it'll be better at the end of this process. And so this is an enormous leap of faith for consumers. And so they're already making this enormous leap of faith. And if I don't have confidence in this leap of faith, if I'm like, hey, listen, the fee's this, unless you don't think that's okay, and maybe we'll do, I want to get out of here. Like, yeah. So I just have to be, no. I will revisit my fees and I revisit my business model when I'm doing business planning with coaches or peers that I respect. Once a year, I'll revisit that. I will never revisit it in the meeting. And so if you and I were meeting, Shelby, and you were doing me the honor of evaluating me as an advisor, and you said, hey, listen, Matthew, 1.5, that sounds high. Like, my husband and I, we can only do this if you come in at 1.3. That's the only way. I'd say, Shelby, you know what? I wish you all the best. Please take this and go on your way. I cannot ever negotiate in the meetings. Just like your process, Shelby. If I was hiring you to evaluate channels and to make a move, and you're like, you know what, Shelby, what I don't want to work on is client messaging because I don't think that's important. You're gonna be like, listen, Jarvis, like this isn't gonna work if you don't have good client messaging. Yeah, Shelby, I know, but just let's not worry about it. You're gonna say, no, like I'm not gonna be part of you blowing this thing up. I don't want to be part of that. And so that confidence, I'm going to respect and say, great, I trust Shelby enough to go with her process. Or on the contrary, if I don't, then I need to find somebody else that I do trust. Sorry, this is like a real passion area for me.
I love it. Yeah, no, I love it. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to with this conversation too, is these are all the nuances that I think advisors and just people in general that we struggle with at times, right? Yep. We struggle with having full confidence and we struggle in being completely consistent. And because of that inconsistency, it can lead to that problem with the confidence. We can self-doubt ourselves because we haven't given our consistency enough breathing room, right? Enough time to sort of win, I guess. What are some of your top thoughts around what not to do in a first couple of meetings with the client in this kind of onboarding phase? What are some things advisors must not do these things? Negotiate fees. That was one.
Negotiate fees. Yeah. Advisors talk way too much. I watch recordings of a lot of advisors. Advisors I coach are welcome to send in recordings of their meetings. They talk way too much. In fact, really a good exercise is just to do little hash marks on your piece of paper every time you talk versus they talk, or every time you ask a question versus you make a statement. Especially in that first meeting, it's all questions. Shelby, tell me your strategy for Social Security. Shelby, congratulations on having saved up $3 million. This is incredible. Tell me your strategy for how you're going to manage this in retirement, right? Shelby, tell me your top concerns looking at retirement. Shelby, tell me how you're going to manage taxes in retirement. Like, I'm going to go through all of these. And none of these are baited questions. Like, I'm asking every one of these questions with the most sincerity in my entire life because I am genuinely curious. I really want to know, Shelby, how you're looking at these things because that's going to shape everything that I do. The other place advisors get hung up talking about themselves, no one cares, talking about investments. Advisors love to say, well, I'm going to look at your investment model and we're going to compare the Morningstar analysis or whatever the case may be. Again, that's all made up stuff. There's no value there. You're going to sound like every other advisor.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting, that idea of communication. You brought up investments. Obviously, we've been in lately some really choppy markets. This whole year has been very choppy. So how do you sort of avoid the investment conversation in sort of a choppy market environment?
Most of my really good things I got from other people because I love to learn. But again, my good friend Micah Shalansky, he always lets prospects know, and I've used the same thing. He'll say, hey, most advisors make the mistake of leading with investments because that's how they get paid and that's all they know. Now, there's some brilliance in that statement. Like, I've diffused the investment conversation in advance, and I've thrown under the bus every single other advisor without making it sound like I'm throwing anybody under the bus. So now if they're going to go talk to anybody else and they lead with investments, they're going to think, Jarvis warned me that some advisors do, right? So then I go in and I say, hey, listen, investments are a passenger on the bus. They do not drive the bus, right? And Shelby, let me give you a quick example of that. Imagine we could build the perfect investment portfolio, like absolutely perfect, and we beat the stock market by 2% every single year, no matter what. Like, we would agree that would be like the perfect investment. Now, Shelby, by the way, if someone ever offers you that, that's probably Bernie Madoff. They're probably trying to steal your money. But let's just imagine that it's not. So you beat the market by 2% every year and you still run out of money in retirement. Did you win the game?
Yeah.
And people have never thought of that. They've thought, because we've been programmed that outperformance is winning the game. But if I say, hey, if you outperform by 2% every year, but you still run out of money, did you win?
Yeah.
No, I didn't win. Perfect. Shelby, that's why we don't start with investments. We end with investments. Critical piece, but our number one goal is to make sure you don't run out of money. Number two goal, Shelby, by the way, is to make sure you don't leave behind a mattress stuffed full of money because that's not winning the game either. We want to end up right in the middle. Investments are part of that. Taxes are part of that. Fees are part of that. Risk management's part of that. But investments are only part of that.
Yeah. Feels like we could almost make those little tick marks for how often we're talking, but also what the subjects are, right? Like how many times did I talk about investments and kind of like breaking some of that habit of our traditional tick marks. By the way, on thinking of those tick marks and those recordings, right? If you're doing a meeting by Zoom, I know advisors are using often Jump AI or Zox. Those are great note-taking tools. Another one that I have used sometimes is Fathom. Fathom tells you how much you've been talking. And you can have it up on your desk and it'll basically say you've talked 48% of the time or whatever. Yeah, it's a good tool set.
Are you a financial advisor ready for a big leap? Making the decision to leave your firm, whether it's a broker-dealer or an RIA, can feel like stepping into the unknown. Muriel Consulting provides personalized, unbiased support to help you navigate transformational career moves with confidence and confidentiality. Schedule a discovery call at murielconsulting.com. MURIEL consulting.com.
So one kind of other sort of tactical question for you is, I really want to think about, again, this first couple of meetings. What are some of the tactical things? You're doing the one-page financial plan. Are there any other tactical elements or maybe even behind the scenes that your team is doing, tactical elements in order to kind of keep abreast of that client or keep informed about that client?
Yeah, we have a whole process for it. It's on our webpage and it's in my book. But we're having them bring all their documents to that first meeting. The team in between the first meeting and the second meeting is building the one-page financial plan. They're doing a net worth statement. We're building a retirement income guardrails report so that we have all of that ready. But I think advisors, again, make that entire process harder than it needs to be. I mean, you see in my book, like our net worth statement is an Excel document that's not even very pretty. And the guardrails, like right now, it's a dynamic image. It used to just be a static image with here's your top income level and your bottom income level. Like we get carried away with this fancy stuff that I think we're just trying to compensate for our own self-doubts. It's not bringing value to the client. And so I just want to, how do I simplify this as much as I possibly can?
Yeah, I think we're bringing in those complex things because we're charging them 1.5% or 3% or whatever the number is, right? And we're like, we have to demonstrate our value. And I think your approach is really that the demonstration of value comes throughout that whole year and all of the quarterly conversations that you're having and the conversations and sort of topics that you're diving into. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of times we confuse volume with value because we've all been pumped full of like this financial software rhetoric where let me check another box and generate another report. I always like to do this highlighter test. So I always tell any advisor who says, hey, listen, like I can't do a one-page financial plan because my clients are more complex or they're more sophisticated or whatever they tell me. And I say, great, bring me your financial plan and let's pull out a highlighter and let's highlight every line in there that's specific, actionable advice. Specific actionable advice, not 400 Monte Carlo illustrations, specific actionable advice. And I bet that we can fit it all on one page. And even if we can't, it's too much, the client's not going to implement it. Like imagine I meet with a client, this happens all the time. The client has no estate documents in place. And maybe they would benefit from a life insurance trust, just to pick an example. I'm not going to start with Shelby, you and your husband need to set up a life insurance trust. I'm going to say, hey, Shelby, we need to get a will in place for you and your husband right away. And then once we get that step done, we'll talk about other steps. We're not going to lead with intentionally defective grantor trusts because we don't have the foundations in place.
That's right. Yeah, I completely get that. You don't want to overwhelm the client, and those first meetings can be, and they walk out very confused, et cetera. Yep. One of the things kind of in closing is you are so well known, obviously, for working less, earning more, creating that lifestyle practice. How does this intentional, consistent onboarding process and approach and conversation support your freedom and that focus that you bring?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm never wondering what the next step is. So when we pull up our prospect tracker, I had my team meeting yesterday, we pull up the prospect tracker, we all know what the next step is. I'm never thinking, what am I going to do with this? I just know, like if they're on step 2, next step is step 3. And we just track it in Excel on a single sheet of paper and we bring it up each week and we say, hey, I was here and now I'm here. That's a strategy, by the way, that I got from this brilliant advisor, Paul Moffat, who's here in Las Vegas, good friend of mine, brilliant advisor. He's over $1 billion of assets, and I've been to his office, and every week he sits down with his team, and they print out the prospect tracker, one page, and they go name by name, and they say, great, who's going to take care of the next step, moving this person from step 4 to step 5? Here he is, $1 billion plus RA, brilliant guy, still printing it out on a piece of paper. And I say, Paul, come on, don't you have any technology? Like, can't you do this better? He says, Jarvis, I have all the technology in the world, but let me tell you what works. Printing this out and sitting down each week and looking at it.
Yeah, it's a basic project plan, essentially, that we would have done all the time in corporate. You would have sat down and talked about where each project was, et cetera. Your client meeting is a project. Each client is a project. I love that. Matt, this has been such a great conversation. We've had so many little nuggets in here and talked about mindset. We've talked about tactical things. Every time I close out the Kick It Open podcast, I love to end with these like kind of quick hit little questions. Okay. All right. So I got 5 of them for you.
Ooh, okay.
All right. What's your favorite app on your phone right now?
Ride Loud. It's my buddy built an app for us to get together with other people dirt biking and doing other sports. So yeah, Ride Loud is my buddy's app. So hands down my favorite.
Awesome. And what is a money mantra that you live by?
Warren Buffett always says, if you don't know who the sucker is at the table, it's you. Mm-hmm. And I just live by the assumption that I'm the sucker at every table. And so I just come in as a student and like, hey, listen, everybody here's smarter than me. What can I learn?
Oh, I love it. Well, speaking of learning, what's something that you've always wanted to learn, but you haven't gotten to yet?
Probably leadership, team leadership. I'd love to learn music. Like I can't carry a tune very well. And so I've tried to learn music a few times. It just never stuck.
Yeah, mine is learning French. We travel, and I really would like to learn French. And I'm like, I'll do it when I retire. My husband's like, why don't you do it now?
Do it now, yeah.
Yeah. All right. What is the best client gift that you've ever given or received, I guess?
So we do client birthday gifts every year. The one that we've seen the most traction with is there's a nonprofit organization called World Vision. They're actually headquartered in Washington State, not far from my office. And they have this brilliant giving catalog where your gift dollar amount is correlated with like getting a sheep or drilling a well or building a school. And so we one year bought a school or gave an equivalent amount to a school, and they sent copies of that to all of our clients as a birthday gift, saying, hey, there wasn't anything we could think to give you. So we pooled all the gifts and we bought a school on your behalf. And clients were over the moon about it. And it did a lot of good in the world too, which was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. What an incredible thing to be able to share with them. And then what is one quality that you think sets really top advisors apart from the others?
Endless students of the game. One of the top advisors I know, multi-billion-dollar shop, almost always the top producer in the room. Every time he goes to a conference, he has his tape recorder out, his phone, he records it, and he listens to all the presentations again on the way home. He's just an endless student of the game, and his income reflects it.
Incredible. All right. And always our last question here at Kick It Open is, what's one door that you're kicking open right now?
I'm kicking open the M&A door pretty hard. After I did my practice exit, there's a lot of advisors that are in a position of unlocking equity from their practice at valuations we've never seen. And I know you're a part of that as well, as far as helping people decide, like, are you on the channel that's unlocking maximum value, whether that's a monetary or just growth? Which is an incredible thing that the industry has never seen, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it is interesting because I think that channel choice really impacts your earnings before owner's compensation, your EBOC level, as we call it. And the higher the EBOC, the higher your valuation is, the better your growth engine. So this closing equation that we've been talking about today, the higher your valuation is. So very good idea. All right. For all of our listeners, we've reached the end of our time. Matt, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Shelby, thank you. It's always an honor.
Awesome. Well, and to all of our listeners, I hope this inspires you to think about the steps that you're making every single day to achieve your highest ambitions. We're kicking the doors open every day. Thanks for being part of the journey. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Kick It Open podcast. The Kick It Open podcast is hosted and developed by Muriel Network. Kick It Open is produced by Shelby Nicholl, edited by Aaron Sherman, graphic design by John Gallagher. If you found today's podcast valuable, please help us out by subscribing and sharing with your friends. Just click that little plus sign or the follow button wherever you get your podcasts.